The doctors handed me a death sentence wrapped in medical jargon: 8 weeks, maybe 10 if I got lucky. I caught the next flight out of Bismarck, straight to Chicago, to see my daughter one last time. We hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since. She married that fool and decided her old man wasn't good enough for her new life. I just wanted to catch a glimpse of her smile, even from across the street, even for just a heartbeat. What I found instead was my baby girl fighting for her life in the ICU at Northwestern Memorial. Tubes running everywhere, machines keeping her breathing. Meanwhile, her husband was throwing a party at his penthouse on the Gold Coast, popping bottles with Instagram models, laughing when I called him. So I made another call. The man who answered had been waiting 17 years for me to ask him for something. 1 hour later, Devin Pierce was on his knees in that hospital corridor, begging me for mercy he never showed my daughter. But mercy wasn't something I had left to give. The plane hit an air pocket, and Marcus Holloway's cup of water nearly spilled across the tray table. He caught it without thinking, years of working oil rigs making his reflexes sharp even at 57. Outside the window, nothing but thick gray clouds stretched to infinity. 15 years he'd spent in those North Dakota fields, working 12-hour shifts in weather that could kill you if you weren't careful. He'd learned not to fear the cold or the danger or the bosses who treated you like equipment. But today his hands shook slightly, and it wasn't from turbulence. In his jacket pocket, folded into quarters, was a piece of paper that had changed everything. He'd memorized every word, even though he'd only read it once. The diagnosis was written in that cold medical language doctors use when they're telling you your life has an expiration date. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Palliative care recommended. Translation: get your affairs in order because there's nothing left to do but wait. 8 weeks, the oncologist had said. Maybe 10 if things went well. Marcus had sat in that office in Memphis, staring at a faded poster about early cancer screening, thinking about only one thing: Kendra. His daughter, who'd stopped returning his calls 3 years ago. After that last conversation went sideways, he could still hear her voice, sharp with anger and disappointment. You don't understand, Daddy. Devin gave me everything I ever dreamed of. The penthouse, the lifestyle, the opportunities. You couldn't even make it to my wedding. You spent your whole life on those rigs, working yourself to death for what? You couldn't even save Mama. That last part cut deeper than any blade. Talking about Jasmine, his wife, Kendra's mother, who'd lost her battle with breast cancer when Kendra was only 10. Back then, Marcus had worked 20-hour days trying to scrape together money for experimental treatments in Houston. None of it mattered. Jasmine died 2 days before he'd saved enough, and Kendra grew up blaming him for not being there, for working too much, for letting her mother slip away. The flight attendant rolled past with her cart. Marcus waved her off. Food was the last thing on his mind. All he wanted was to see his daughter one more time. Not to talk, she wouldn't want that anyway. Not to ask for forgiveness or a place in her fancy new life. Just to see her face, to make sure she was happy, to carry that image with him into whatever came next. He'd flown without warning because her phone had been silent for 6 months. Not disconnected, just silent, like she'd turned it off permanently or thrown it in Lake Michigan. At first, he thought she'd changed numbers and didn't want him to have the new one. Then worry crept in, but he pushed it down. She was a grown woman. She had a wealthy husband from a powerful family. She had everything. She just didn't want her father around. That was her choice. The clouds outside started breaking apart, revealing the sprawl of Chicago below. Brown and gray buildings, ribbons of highway, the lake stretching out like an inland sea. Marcus pulled out his phone, turned it on out of habit. The screen lit up and immediately buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. Chicago area code. He answered expecting a robocall, but the voice on the other end made his blood run cold. Marcus Holloway? Yeah, this is him. My name's Sharon. I'm a nurse at Northwestern Memorial. You're Kendra Pierce's father. His heart forgot how to beat for a second. Yes, what happened? Is she... You need to come right away. Just you. Her husband shouldn't know. What do you mean he shouldn't? No? What the hell happened to my daughter? The pause felt like an eternity. She's alive for now, but you need to come. I'll text you the details. The line went dead. Marcus sat frozen, staring at his phone, feeling something shift inside him. He'd come to Chicago to die quietly, to say goodbye to his daughter from a distance. But those plans just went out the window. The plane touched down, and he was the first one off, moving through O'Hare like a man possessed. A cab ride to Northwestern took 40 minutes through midday traffic. Marcus spent every second of it trying not to imagine what he'd find. A nurse calling in secret, telling him not to let the husband know. That only meant one thing, something bad. Something Devin Pierce wanted hidden. Sharon was waiting for him outside the ICU. A black woman in her 40s with exhausted eyes that had seen too much. She took one look at Marcus and knew. Come with me. We need to talk first. She led him to a corner by the vending machines where nobody could overhear. Officially, she was in a car accident. That's what the paperwork says, what her husband told everyone. Unofficially? Sharon's jaw tightened. I've worked emergency medicine for 15 years. I know the difference between car crash injuries and what happens when someone beats you half to death. Marcus felt ice spread through his chest. Tell me everything. She was admitted 4 days ago. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, severe head trauma. Her husband showed up once, stayed 5 minutes, left. Haven't heard from him since. No calls. Nothing. Sharon's voice dropped lower. This isn't the first time, Mr. Holloway. In the past year alone, she's been hospitalized 3 times. Broken arm. Cracked ribs. Each time Devin showed up with paperwork and phone calls to the right people, and the reports got buried. I tried talking to her, but she was too scared. She understood what his family could do. What family? Marcus asked, though he already knew. Devin's father is Raymond Pierce, owns half the commercial real estate in Chicago. His uncle's connected to the state attorney's office. They can make problems disappear. Sharon paused. But Kendra was calling for you when they brought her in. Not her husband, not her friends. You. Marcus's throat closed up. 3 years of silence. 3 years of thinking she hated him. And when everything went wrong, she called for her daddy. Can I see her? Sharon nodded and led him through the ICU doors. They walked past rooms filled with the sound of machines measuring other people's suffering. Then Sharon stopped at one door, turned to him. Prepare yourself. It's bad. She pushed the door open. Marcus stepped inside, and the world tilted sideways. On the bed, connected to more machines than he could count, was his baby girl, Kendra, the little girl he used to carry on his shoulders through Beale Street, laughing at street musicians. A teenager who'd won every art competition she entered. The woman who'd walked away from him, thinking he'd let her down. Her face was swollen and discolored, bruises covering her like war paint. Her lips were split, one eye swollen shut. Around. Her neck was a brace, and beneath it he could see the unmistakable marks of fingers. Someone had tried to strangle her. Marcus collapsed into the chair beside her bed, took her hand so small and cold and fragile, and broke down. He'd seen men die on the rigs. He'd held his wife as cancer took her. But nothing prepared him for seeing his daughter like this. Kendra, he whispered. Baby girl, Daddy's here. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before. She didn't respond. The machines beeped their rhythm, indifferent to his pain. Marcus sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Sharon came back in, checked the monitors, started to leave. Wait, Marcus said. Where's her phone? Sharon hesitated, then nodded. I'll get it. She returned with a clear plastic bag containing Kendra's belongings. Marcus took the phone screen cracked, but still functional, and turned it on. No passcode. He opened the photo gallery, started scrolling. Pictures of Kendra smiling at expensive restaurants. Kendra on a yacht. Kendra and Devin at some charity gala, looking like the perfect couple. All lies, all performance. Then he found the videos. The most recent one was dated 3 weeks ago. He pressed play. Devin's face filled the screen, handsome and arrogant, that smile of someone who'd never been told no. Off camera, Marcus could hear crying and drunken laughter. Kendra, baby, say something for Daddy. Tell him you fell down all by yourself. The camera moved, and there was his daughter. Lip bleeding, makeup running, eyes full of fear. She looked at someone off-screen, someone she was terrified of, and spoke in a dead voice. I fell down on my own. More laughter. Multiple voices. Women's voices. See that, Pops? Devin's voice, mocking. Your little girl's doing just fine with me. You want to come do something about it? You're just some rig worker from Memphis, right? What are you gonna do? File a report? The video cut off. Marcus stood in that hospital hallway holding a broken phone, watching his daughter's abuse played back like entertainment. His hands weren't shaking anymore. He was past fear, past anger, past everything except cold, crystal clear purpose. He pulled out his own phone, scrolled through his contacts to a number he hadn't called in 17 years. Hit dial. The rings stretched out forever. Then a deep voice with a South Side Chicago accent answered. Yeah? Jerome, it's Marcus. Marcus Holloway from the Memphis docks. You remember 2007? Long pause. Then something like a laugh. 17 years, Marcus. 17 years I've been waiting for this call. You know, I always said anything, anytime. You pulled me out of that warehouse fire when everybody else ran. What do you need, brother? Marcus looked at the closed door of the ICU where his daughter lay fighting for her life. He looked at the phone with the video that would never leave his memory. The Pierce family. Devin and Raymond Pierce. I need you to burn their whole world down. Consider it done. The call ended. Sharon found him in the hospital cafeteria 2 hours later. Marcus was sitting at a plastic table, staring at nothing, a cup of cold coffee in front of him. What did you do? She asked quietly. What I should have done years ago. I made a call. To who? Someone who owes me his life. Someone who knows how to shine light in dark places. Marcus looked up at her. Devin Pierce and his father think they're untouchable. They're wrong. What's going to happen? The truth. That's all. Just the truth coming out where everyone can see it. Sharon sat down across from him, studied his face. You're a dangerous man, Marcus Holloway. No, I'm a dying man with 8 weeks to live and nothing left to lose. That's what makes me dangerous. You're sick? Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I came to Chicago to say goodbye to my daughter. Instead, I found her in the ICU because some punk thinks money makes him a god. Marcus's voice was steady, calm. I got 8 weeks. That's more than enough time. Sharon was quiet for a long moment. My father died of cancer when I was 21. Worked construction his whole life. Didn't get to do half the things he wanted. She paused. I understand more than you think. They sat together in that fluorescent-lit cafeteria, 2 strangers brought together by somebody else's tragedy. Outside, Chicago kept moving, indifferent and infinite. Somewhere in a Gold Coast penthouse, Devin Pierce was still celebrating, still drinking, still laughing, not knowing his empire had started crumbling. Marcus's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Holloway? This is Assistant State's Attorney Chun. We'd like you to come in tomorrow at 9 a.m. to give a statement. He wrote down the address on a napkin, hung up, and allowed himself a small, grim smile. The machine had been set in motion. The official machinery of justice that usually moved slow, but when it finally got rolling, couldn't be stopped. Sharon went back to her floor. Marcus stayed in the cafeteria, unable to sleep, thinking about everything that had brought him to this moment. Tomorrow, he'd talk to the state's attorney. Tomorrow, he'd start telling the truth about Devin Pierce. Tonight, he'd sit here and wait for his daughter to wake up. Around midnight, his phone rang again. Jerome. It's already started, Marcus. Old man Raymond Pierce just got picked up by federal agents. Financial crimes. They've been building the case for years. Just needed the right push to move. Your girl's situation gave them that push. Good. And Marcus? The media's getting the domestic violence story tomorrow morning. Video and all. It's going to be everywhere. Even better. You sure about this? Once it's out there, it can't be taken back. Marcus thought about Kendra in that hospital bed. Thought about that video. Thought about how many times Devin had hurt her while his family made it disappear. I'm sure. Burn it all down. Near dawn, Marcus dozed off in the cafeteria chair and had a dream. He was back in Memphis in 2007, that warehouse fire that changed everything. Smoke everywhere, people screaming. He'd run inside because someone said workers were trapped. Found Jerome unconscious under a fallen beam. Carried him out on his back, even though Jerome outweighed him by 50 pounds. The warehouse collapsed seconds after they got clear. Jerome lost the use of his left arm, but kept his life. Marcus developed lung problems that probably led to the cancer growing in him now. And Jerome became someone different, someone who knew how to find information, how to connect dots, how to wait 17 years for the chance to repay a debt. Marcus woke to Sharon shaking his shoulder, her eyes bright with something like hope. She's awake. Just for a minute, but she asked for you. He followed her upstairs, legs barely working, heart hammering. In the room, Kendra's eyes were open, just barely, looking around confused until they found him. Daddy, she whispered. Marcus was at her side in 2 steps, taking her hand. I'm here, baby girl. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. A tear rolled down her bruised cheek. I'm sorry, Daddy, for everything. For those things I said. I was so stupid. Don't. Rest. We got time to talk later. Do we? Her eyes focused on him, seeing something in his face. You look different. Daddy, what's wrong? He smiled, squeezed her hand. Nothing's wrong. Everything's going to be fine now. You just focus on getting better. Kendra's eyes started closing again, exhaustion pulling her under, but her fingers held tight to his hand. Marcus sat there holding on, watching his daughter sleep, watching the monitors track her heartbeat, and made a promise. Devin Pierce would never touch her again. Raymond Pierce would answer for his crimes. The whole rotten empire they built on money and connections and buried truths would come crashing down. 8 weeks wasn't much time, but it would be enough. While Marcus sat beside his daughter's hospital bed holding her hand, a very different scene played out 30 miles away in the Gold Coast. Devin Pierce's penthouse was blazing with lights, music thumping loud enough to violate every noise ordinance in the book. Around the rooftop pool, a dozen people had gathered with no intention of stopping before sunrise. Devin, 32 years old, heir to the Pierce real estate empire, and husband to the woman currently fighting for her life at Northwestern Memorial, lounged on an oversized chair with a bottle of Dom Perignon in one hand, watching 2 models play some ridiculous game in the pool. He was drunk, but not too drunk, just enough to feel that pleasant buzz, where nothing seemed to matter. And plenty didn't matter lately. Kendra was back in the hospital. Those bruises again, The doctor's asking questions again, having to call his father to handle it again. But his father always handled it. A few phone calls, an envelope to the right person. And suddenly the paperwork read, domestic accident, or complications from a minor collision. The system worked like clockwork. And Devin had stopped worrying about such trivial matters long ago. One of the models, a tall woman named Amber with legs for days, draped herself across his chair. "Where's your wife, Devin?" "Sick," he said with that smug smile he'd perfected. "She's always something. Very delicate. Maybe she needs vitamins," Amber laughed. "Maybe she needs a brain," Devin shot back, and everyone within earshot laughed along. He loved this being the center of attention, saying whatever came to mind, having beautiful women laugh at his jokes. This was the life he deserved. His phone vibrated on the glass table, next to the champagne bottle. Dad. Again. Third time in an hour. Devin glanced at the screen and ignored it. His father probably wanted to discuss the investor meeting tomorrow, or remind him about some family obligation. It could wait until morning. The phone rang again immediately. "Dad." And again. And again. Devin finally answered, irritation bleeding into his voice. "Yeah, what's up?" "I'm busy." His father's voice came through strange, not with the usual confidence Raymond Pierce always carried. Raymond Pierce spoke like a man used to giving orders and having them followed instantly. But now his voice carried something else. Fear. "Where are you right now?" "Home, with friends. Why?" "Federal agents just left my office. They're investigating the infrastructure contracts, the 2014 projects. They know everything, Devin. Everything." Devin sat up slowly, the pleasant buzz evaporating. "What do you mean, everything?" "Documents, bank records, correspondence, it's all in their hands." "Who leaked this?" "Wait, slow down." "What are you talking about?" "The kickbacks. The shell companies. Every dollar we moved through those construction deals. It's all exposed." Raymond's voice cracked. "They're building a case." The line went dead. Devin stared at his phone, trying to process what he just heard. Then he dialed his father back. Straight to voicemail. Again, voicemail. His uncle at the state's attorney's office. Number disconnected. His father's business partner. Out of service area. Something was very, very wrong. Amber noticed his expression and touched his shoulder. "Hey, you okay?" "I need to make some calls." Devin stood, walked away from the pool, opened his phone's browser, and typed his father's name. The headlines hit him like a physical blow. Real estate mogul Raymond. Pierce detained in federal fraud investigation. Pierce family empire under scrutiny. What we know, millions in illegal kickbacks. Alleged in infrastructure scandal. More kept loading. Dozens of articles, all published within the last 2 hours. Devin scrolled through them, feeling the ground dissolve beneath his feet. Where did this come from? How did it happen so fast? Who could have done this? One headline caught his eye. Domestic violence allegations surface in Pierce family scandal. He opened the article, and his stomach dropped. There was his face. Next to it, a photo of Kendra from her social media. Below that, text that made his hands start shaking. According to medical sources, Kendra Pierce has been hospitalized multiple times in the past year with injuries consistent with domestic abuse. Each time, her husband Devin Pierce insisted on alternative explanations, and the incidents were not properly investigated due to the family's connections. Further down, there was a video. That video, the one he'd recorded 3 weeks ago when he was drunk and angry and wanted to show that uppity woman who was in charge. The view counter showed 1.2 million. Devin threw his phone onto the grass and put his face in his hands. This was it. The end. Even if his father somehow got clear of the fraud charges, even if his uncle could fix something with the criminal investigation, this video couldn't be erased. It was everywhere. Millions of people had seen it. Millions were discussing it in comment sections, sharing it, condemning him. All his life, every problem got solved with money or connections. Traffic ticket? Dad made a call. Hit someone's car? The lawyer handled it. Beat his wife unconscious? The hospital director signed papers. But now all those mechanisms were useless because the information had escaped containment and taken on its own life. It couldn't be bribed, threatened, or crushed with influence. It just existed, spreading like wildfire. Amber and the other guests started checking their phones, whispering, looking at him differently. The party atmosphere evaporated like morning dew. People started making excuses, claiming urgent business, disappearing into the night. Within 30 minutes, Devin stood alone by his rooftop pool with empty bottles and abandoned glasses scattered everywhere. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered mechanically. Double quotes Devin Pierce. Yeah, Assistant State's Attorney Chun. We need you to come in tomorrow at 9 a.m. to give a statement. The voice was cold, professional. I'll provide the address. Devin wrote the information on a cocktail napkin with trembling hands, hung up, stared at nothing. His head felt empty, ransacked, like someone had broken in and stolen everything valuable. An hour later, he was speeding through Chicago in his Porsche Cayenne, running red lights, ignoring speed limits. He needed to see Kendra, needed to talk to her, explain, make her understand. She must be at that private clinic where they usually took her after incidents. But when he arrived, the doctor on duty looked at him with barely concealed disgust. Kendra Pierce isn't registered here. Then where is she? Northwestern Memorial. Intensive care, from what I understand. Intensive care. Those words hit harder than any punch. He knew he'd hit her harder than usual last time. Knew she'd fallen badly, hit her head. But intensive care meant this had exceeded what could be buried and forgotten. Devin drove to Northwestern, violating every traffic law, miraculously avoiding accidents. At the hospital entrance, he parked on the grass, jumped out, rushed inside. In the lobby, he grabbed a passing nurse's arm. Where's intensive care? I need to see my wife. Kendra Pierce. The nurse pulled back, pointed toward the elevators. Devin ran, not noticing how people stared, not realizing his face was already recognized by those who'd seen the news, seen that video. To them, he wasn't the heir to a wealthy family anymore. He was the man who beat his wife and filmed it. On the third floor, security stopped him. Two large men in uniform blocked his path, asked for identification. I'm her husband. You have to let me through. One moment. A guard made a phone call, spoke quietly, then looked at Devin with an expression impossible to read. You can't see the patient. Doctor's orders. What do you mean I can't? I have rights. I'm her husband. The same husband who beat her for the past year. The voice came from the side. Devin turned and saw a middle-aged black woman in scrubs, tired face, eyes that promised no mercy. Who the hell are you? The nurse who admitted your wife 3 times. Who saw her fractures, her bruises, her tears. Who called her father because somebody had to protect her from you. The father. That word made Devin freeze. He knew Kendra had a father, some worker from Memphis, who hadn't been in their lives for years. Kendra mentioned him sometimes when she was especially depressed, but Devin never took him seriously. What could a rig worker do against the Pierce family? Where is he? In the room with his daughter. Unlike you, he came as soon as he found out she needed him. Devin moved toward the unit doors, but the guards blocked him again. He tried to push past, but they were stronger, and seconds later he was face first against the wall, with his arms twisted behind his back, Calm down, or we call the cops. You know who I am? Yeah, the guy from that video. The one who beats women and makes them lie on camera. Those words cut through the rage like ice water. Devin stopped struggling, let the guards position him against the wall. He stood there breathing hard, trying to understand what to do next. The ICU door opened and out walked a short, thin black man with sunken cheeks and weathered hands, dressed in a simple jacket and worn jeans. Nothing special, just an ordinary working man. But something in his eyes made Devin's breath catch. The man approached, stopped a few feet away, and looked at Devin with a long, heavy gaze. So this is what you are, Devin Pierce, the prince who promised my daughter everything and gave her hell. Listen, this is all a misunderstanding. Shut your mouth. 3 words, spoken quietly, but with such force that Devin actually fell silent, as if someone had sealed his lips. I saw the video. Heard you laughing. Saw my daughter's face when she said what you forced her to say. I saw her in that room full of tubes and machines keeping her alive. So don't give me that misunderstanding talk. How much do you want? The question escaped automatically. All Devin's life, every problem got solved with money. He didn't know any other way. 1 million? 2? I'll transfer everything to Kendra. The penthouse, the cars, the accounts. I'll give her a divorce without conditions. Just stop all this. Take down the articles. Delete the video. Marcus looked at him in silence, expression unreadable. Devin took this as encouragement to continue. I have money. Not as much as before, but enough. I can transfer $300,000 right now. It's not a bribe, it's compensation. I know money can't fix the past, but it can help build the future. You know what I make in a year? Marcus asked quietly. About $18,000. $300,000 is nearly 17 years of my work. That's a lot of money for someone like me. Exactly. Good money. You could... 17 years of work, Marcus interrupted. And you think for that money I'm going to betray my daughter? Tell the investigators she fell on her own? When I saw that video? When I saw her in that room? Devin dropped to his knees right there in the hospital hallway, on the cold linoleum, under the eyes of this man he dismissed as insignificant. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do everything you tell me. I'll get therapy. I'll never touch her again. I'll report every step to you. Just don't send me to prison. Tears ran down his face, real tears this time, not performance. For the first time in his life, he cried from genuine fear of a future that looked like a black hole. Prison, shame, loss of everything. No hope of returning to his previous life. Marcus looked down at him, and something strange flickered in his eyes. Not triumph, not malice. Something like exhaustion and sadness. You know what's the worst part? Even now you don't understand what you did. You're crying because you're afraid of consequences for yourself. Not once have you apologized to her. Not once have you asked how she's feeling. You only think about yourself. That's not true. I love Kendra. In your way. Exactly. Your way means hitting her when she annoys you. Humiliating her when you want to feel powerful. Locking her away so she can't complain. That's not love, Devin. That's sickness. And I hope prison forces you to get treatment. The door burst open. Security guards entered with 2 Chicago police officers behind them. Devin Pierce, you're under arrest for violating a restraining order and witness intimidation. You have the right to remain silent. They pulled him off the floor, handcuffed him, started leading him out. At the door, he turned back. Kendra was looking at him from the hospital bed, and in her eyes was nothing, no fear, no hatred, just emptiness. The emptiness of someone who no longer felt anything toward their tormentor. Kendra, please, I'm sorry. She turned toward the wall, closed her eyes. That silence was worse than any words could have been. They took Devin away. Marcus stood for a moment staring at the closed door. Then he returned to the chair beside his daughter's bed. "Daddy," Kendra whispered. "Yeah? Baby? Will he really go to prison?" "Yes. Maybe not for long rich people know how to get by. But his life will never be the same." His name became synonymous with this. People will recognize him on the street. Point at him. He won't get hired anywhere decent. Won't be accepted in any respectable circle. That's worse than prison, believe me. And his father? His father will answer for his own crimes. Enough evidence came out to put him away for years. His whole empire was built on dirty money. Now everyone knows it. Kendra processed this in silence. Then she looked at her father. "Daddy, what you said about the cancer, is that true?" He didn't lie. No point. "Yeah, stage 4 pancreatic. Diagnosed 2 weeks ago. Doctors said 8 to 10 weeks. Tears rolled down her face. She tried to sit up, but couldn't. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you call? 3 years you didn't answer. 3 years I was a stranger to you. I didn't want to impose. I'm sorry, Daddy. Forgive me. I was such a fool. I thought Devin was happiness. That money was happiness. But real happiness is being loved without conditions. The way you always loved me." He leaned over, hugged her carefully, avoiding the wires and tubes. "I always loved you, baby girl. Even when you pushed me away. Even when you said those terrible things about your mama. I loved you then, and I'll love you until my last breath." They held each other for a long time. Father and daughter, finally reunited after so many years apart. Outside the window, Chicago's lights blazed indifferent to human tragedy and triumph. Somewhere in the city, Devin was being processed into lockup. Somewhere agents were questioning Raymond Pierce. Somewhere journalists were writing new articles about the scandal. But here in this small ICU room, there was peace for the first time in many years. "Daddy?" Kendra whispered. "Yeah? When they let me out, take me home. Back to Memphis. I want to see the river again. I want to hear the blues on Beale Street. I want to go home." Marcus smiled, the first real smile in many days. "I'll take you home, baby. I promise." 1 month passed like a single long breath. Kendra moved from intensive care to a regular room after a week. Then came the long hours of recovery, endless doctor visits, physical therapy that exhausted her like running marathons. But through it all, Marcus was there. He arrived every morning when visiting hours. Started and stayed until the nurses practically escorted him out at night. He rented a small room in a cheap motel near the hospital. Because he didn't have money for anything better. Jerome, that man from Memphis, who owed him a life debt, had transferred a substantial amount. Enough to make Marcus's eyes widen, but he only took what he absolutely needed for rent and food. The rest he asked Jerome to hold for Kendra, for when she got back on her feet and needed to start fresh. The news about the Pierce family continued making headlines. Raymond Pierce was formally arrested and charged with multiple federal crimes: tax evasion on a massive scale, conspiracy to defraud, bribery of public officials. His lawyers tried to get house arrest, citing his age and health conditions, but the judge denied it. Too much evidence. Too much public attention. Too much noise. Devin got charged with aggravated domestic battery and witness intimidation. That video he'd recorded while laughing at his wife became the prosecution's centerpiece evidence. They showed it in court. They showed it on the news. Every talk show discussed it. Every social media platform shared it. Devin Pierce's face became the symbol of domestic violence, the perfect example of what happens behind closed doors in wealthy households. Kendra, refused to give media interviews or appear in court personally. Her testimony got recorded on video at the hospital with a lawyer and therapist present. That was enough. She spoke in a low voice, sometimes pausing to hold back tears, but she told everything. The first hit that came 3 months into the marriage. The apologies and promises that never meant anything. The fear that became her constant companion. The helplessness of knowing nobody would help because her abuser had too much money and too many connections. Marcus sat beside her while they recorded the statement, holding her hand. He didn't cry, though inside everything twisted with pain for his daughter. He was simply there, the way he should have been all those years, but wasn't because she'd pushed him away. Because he'd let her. Because life happened the way it did, and not any other way. When they finally discharged Kendra, they left that same day. Marcus bought 2 plane tickets to Memphis, and Kendra didn't protest. She just nodded when he asked if she was ready, gathered her few belongings into a small bag, walked out of that room without looking back. Chicago, which once seemed like her dream city, now only made her want to run as far away as possible and never returned out at the airport. People recognized her. One woman approached and told Kendra she admired her courage, that she was brave for escaping that nightmare. Kendra thanked her and hurried toward the gate, hiding behind dark sunglasses. Marcus walked beside her, ready at any moment to shield her from stares and questions. The plane took off into gray Chicago skies, and Kendra finally allowed herself to relax. She looked out the window at the city falling away below and thought about how strange life was. Just a month ago, she'd been in the ICU, not knowing if she'd survive. Just a month ago, her father had been a stranger she resented and blamed for all her problems. Now she was flying home with him, to a place she'd once called backward and provincial, and that place seemed like the only safe corner in the entire world. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah, baby? Tell me about home. What's it like now?" Marcus smiled and started describing the endless stretches along the Mississippi, golden in the setting sun. The music drifting up from Beale Street on summer nights. The small neighborhood where everyone knew everyone and nobody locked their doors. The silence so deep and complete that at first it seemed deafening, but then became the most beautiful sound in the world. Kendra listened, and for the first time in many years, she felt something like peace. Not happiness, that was still far away, but peace. The feeling that the worst was behind her and something new waited ahead, maybe unknown but no longer terrifying. They landed in Memphis in late afternoon when the sun painted everything orange and gold. From the airport to Marcus's neighborhood was another hour's drive, and his old friend Otis picked them up. Otis was a big man with a gray beard, and kind eyes had worked the docks with Marcus for 20 years. He hugged Marcus like a brother and shook Kendra's hand gently, as if afraid she might break. "We've been following the news," Otis said. "The whole neighborhood's been worried about you, young lady." Kendra felt embarrassed, didn't know what to say. She wasn't used to this simple, uncalculated concern. In the circles she'd moved through for the past few years, people expressed sympathy with polite phrases masking nothing but curiosity and a desire to gossip. But this stranger looked at her like she was family, and his words carried absolute sincerity. Marcus's house turned out to be a small wooden structure with a slanted roof and a porch overlooking the river. Inside it was clean but modest: kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms. Otis had turned on the AC beforehand, and the house felt cool and welcoming. Kendra looked around, adjusting to the new space, and suddenly noticed a photograph on the wall. Herself, maybe 5 years old, in her father's arms, both of them laughing. Next to them was her mother, Jasmine, young and beautiful and alive. "You kept this?" "I kept all the photos. They were always with me, even when you didn't want to know about me." Kendra approached the wall, stared at the photo for a long time. She barely remembered her mother like that, alive and joyful. In her memory, there was only a pale woman in a hospital bed getting weaker each day, and Daddy always working, and the blame she'd placed on him for not being able to save Mama. Forgive me, Daddy, for everything. For those words about Mama. I was a child. I didn't understand. You were a child in pain. Children say terrible things when they're hurting. It's normal. I forgave you a long time ago. They hugged in the middle of that small living room, and Kendra cried while Marcus stroked her head and whispered soothing words the way he did when she was little and woke from nightmares. The first days in nightmares, the first days in Yalte, Memphis, were difficult. Kendra had to adjust to the silence, the absence of city noise, the slow pace of life that seemed to be the only one possible here. She slept a lot, ate a lot, walked a lot around the neighborhood, breathing clean, humid air. Gradually, the bruises on her body faded. The pain in her ribs subsided. The nightmares that haunted her every night started coming less frequently. That Marcus stayed close, but didn't push. He didn't try to force conversations. He cooked, told stories about the neighbors and their quirks, showed her his favorite spots by the river. One night he woke her at midnight, threw a thick shawl over her shoulders, led her to the porch. Look! Kendra looked up and froze. Heat lightning illuminated the horizon while thousands of fireflies danced over the water in the darkness. She'd seen them in photos and movies, but reality was 1,000 times more beautiful. So beautiful it took her breath away. This is what I wanted to show you years ago. But you didn't want to come back then. I was a fool. I thought happiness lived in big cities and expensive things. Turns out it's here, in the silence, in the beauty, and having someone beside you who truly loves you. They stayed on that porch watching the fireflies. Father and daughter, finally found. And that moment was worth all the lost years, all the tears and resentments, all the nightmare they'd lived through. 2 weeks after arriving, Kendra found something in her bag she'd forgotten about, a pregnancy test she'd bought in Chicago. She stared at the box for a long time, afraid to open it, afraid of what the truth would mean. She'd suspected for several days, but was terrified to know for certain. The test showed 2 lines. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, stared at that small plastic object that changed everything. A baby, Devon's baby, the child of the man who'd beaten her for months and nearly killed her. What was she supposed to do with that knowledge? Marcus found her an hour later, still sitting in the bathroom with the test in her hands and a blank stare fixed on the wall. Kendra, what happened? She handed him the test without speaking. He looked at the 2 lines, and his face showed an expression she couldn't decipher. It's his. Yes. Long pause. Marcus sat beside her on the tub's edge, took her hand. What do you want to do? I don't know, Daddy. I can't think about this baby without remembering him. What he did. But at the same time, it's my baby too. My blood. Part of me. You don't have to decide right now. You have time to think. And whatever you decide will be right, because it'll be your decision. I'll be here no matter what. For how long? The doctor said 8 to 10 weeks. It's already been over a month. Marcus smiled with that special smile he developed recently. The smile of a man who'd accepted his fate and no longer feared it. Doctors don't know everything. They don't know I have a reason to live now. That I wake up every morning and see you, and that gives me strength for another day. Maybe I'll live 2 months. Maybe 6. Maybe a year. Nobody knows for sure. But whatever time I have left, I'll spend it with you. Kendra hugged him and cried, but not tears of despair. Tears of relief. Tears of someone who finally understood she wasn't alone. Another week passed. Kendra thought constantly, walked through Memphis neighborhoods, talked with her father about the past and future. And one morning she woke with the feeling that the decision had made itself. Rising from somewhere deep in her soul, she found Marcus on the porch drinking coffee, looking at the river. "Daddy, I've decided." "What did you decide?" "I'm keeping the baby. It's not their fault having that father. This is my child. I'm going to love them. I'll do everything to make sure they're never like Devin. I'll raise them differently." Marcus put down his cup, looked at his daughter. Tears shined in his eyes, but he was smiling. "You're strong, Kendra. Stronger than I thought. Stronger than you thought. It's because you're here. Because I'm not alone anymore." He stood and hugged her. They stayed on that porch, holding each other, watching the Memphis sky brighten in the east. A new day. A new life. A new hope. Marcus Holloway lived another 14 months, much longer than any doctor predicted. He saw his daughter's belly grow with each passing month. He held her hand when she gave birth in the small regional hospital. He was the first to hold his grandson, a tiny baby with dark eyes and a stubborn chin. They named him Marcus. After his grandfather, the elder Marcus managed to teach him his first words, managed to rock him on his knees, managed to tell him the stories he'd once told Kendra. And then one quiet winter night, when soft rain was falling outside and heat lightning lit the horizon, he closed his eyes and didn't open them again. Kendra found him in the morning, lying peacefully in bed with a smile on his lips. She didn't scream or cry. She simply sat beside him, took his hand, and stayed like that for a long time, saying goodbye to the man who'd given her a second life, who'd proven that love is stronger than money, stronger than fear, stronger even than death. They buried Marcus in the small cemetery outside town where you could see the river. On the headstone they wrote, "Marcus Holloway, father, grandfather, a man who did the right thing." Kendra stayed in that small house with the porch overlooking the water. She raised her son and worked remotely as a graphic designer, the dream she'd had in her youth. Sometimes at night, she'd go out to the porch and watch the fireflies over the water. And it seemed like her father was somewhere, up there also watching those magical lights. Devin Pierce received 5 years in prison. His father Raymond got 12 years in federal penitentiary. Their empire collapsed. Their name became synonymous with corruption and abuse. Their story entered the books as proof that money doesn't grant the right to violence or impunity. Little Marcus grew up healthy and happy, knowing his grandfather had been a hero, that he'd flown to Chicago to rescue Mommy when she was in trouble, that he'd made a single phone call that changed everything. And when Marcus grew up, he too would do the right thing, because that's how he was raised. Because love passes from generation to generation. Because one person can change the world if they have the courage to try. Asterisk. I'm so happy you stayed with me throughout this story. If it touched you, show it by clicking the like button and subscribing. Let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. It makes me so happy to know where you're watching from across the country. If you want to support the channel, you can click the link below. I share news stories every day. 2 of my most popular videos will be in the next one, so choose the one that appeals to you and see you there. I love you all so much. I'm sharing these stories so you don't have to experience them. Goodbye.